week on Linux Weekly Daily Wednesdays, the Richard Stallman hates Uber, but for all the wrong reasons, and Zalios, however you want to enunciate it, has an XFCE spin because, well, XFCE is the best desktop manager.
Microsoft joins the Linux Foundation. In other news, pigs have just sprouted wings, and the authentication on crypt setup can be bypassed by waiting for it, holding down the enter key for 70 seconds.
And you can install Linux on the NES Classic, which already comes with Linux pre-installed when you buy it. And now Fedora can play MP3 files because they love software patents and respect all of them.
Okay, this is going to be a fun show. I think we should just dive into it with something, I don't know. Man, come on, snowball fight at my place, lads.
Hold in hell, pigs are flying. It's hell on earth.
So you might know that some Linux distributions don't come with audio and video codecs, not because their code is under proprietary license, but because the technology is patented. So they don't want to risk anything, and they choose not to ship any of that. But the MP3 file format is getting quite old, and the software patent is now over. So Fedora will now ship with the MP3 codecs, which should be lame. Not that it's lame, but lame is the name of the MP3 codec. And I mean, like Ubuntu did you can get MP3 codecs in Ubuntu pretty easily, like just checking a checkbox to install time. On Fedora and like other distributions, it's quite hard to get these. And now, I mean, it won't solve everything because you'll get MP3, sure, but you won't get a bunch of other formats.
As I was saying, this, and Van actually brought this up in the notes, this only provides the deck part of codec, which is decoding. Because if you want to encode it, you still need to install the, what is it called, Van? A package I can't remember.
Lame. No? Oh.
No, the package for the codecs and Fedora.
Extra is non-free.
That's the one. Yeah.
I mean, that's something I've been installing with the Fedoras since forever, because I was always a bit roundabout, but it never, I mean, it was 20 seconds, so I'm shocked. I'm floored this finally made it in, but at the same time, it was like, yay. It didn't necessarily blow me away, but on the train with the Microsofts.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of very cold days, weeks, seasons in hell, we have Microsoft joining the Linux Foundation. And not just some regular, they give a little bit of money, they get to be part of the Linux Foundation. No, they're platinum members. That's $500,000 a year to be on the board of the Linux Foundation. Microsoft joins Cisco, Huawei, IBM, Intel, NEC, Oracle, Qualcomm, and Samsung on the platinum level. Whoa. And,
I don't know, man. You're definitely singing the notes. It's like, what's their angle? What are they up to? And it was just crazy. And I was I was reading through it, and I was like, oh, there it is, right at the end. John Gossman from the Azure team gets to join the board. And I don't know, Strider, we've seen Microsoft kind of shift a little bit. And they're like, okay, we're not going to be so smitey towards the Linux, if you've been around for any amount of time, they're like, Linux is cancer, open source is cancer, and all that, and they've changed their mind. Now they kind of transitioned more to a software company that's thinking along the lines of, all right, let's just have everything running everywhere, right?
Which makes me wonder if they will be getting rid of Windows Server soon, because they are aiming at cloud-based operating systems, and now they have Ubuntu on Windows. They ship Ubuntu with Windows. They are shipping open source version of .NET. They have SQL Server also on Linux. So what's left for Windows Server? Exactly.
I don't know, man. Those words right there just terrified some Windows click admins, though, man.
I mean, part of me at this point wants to laugh maniacally. Part of me wants to question what exactly is their end goal with this one, since they're now on the board. What are they playing at? And another part of me wonders what I'm doing with my life, that I actually care. Just kidding. I care about the show and Linux Gamecast Weekly. Love you guys.
Hey, man, it could be crazy. We'll get the Microsoft's X server, and it'll support DX12 Linux. And
I don't think that they will ever do something related to the Linux desktop, except maybe for Visual Studio Code. And
you heard it
Skype.
right here, folks. That's 100% guarantee they're about to do what I just said.
What's interesting is that they will be shipping Visual Studio, the full Visual Studio, not just code, to Mac OS X, and I wonder if they will be shipping it for Linux as well in the future.
It could be interesting.
Yeah,
but from Microsoft to more Microsoft, because why not?
Yes. Going from a cold day in hell to when pigs fly, ZDNet will be regarded as the voice of reason. Because, yes, this comes from ZDNet, and it's a little bit of a story about a Microsoft partner spreading a little rumor that Munich was reverting back, or considering reverting back, to Windows 10. Of course, that is all a load of bull honky, as they say, because the company that was saying that, Accenture, is a Microsoft partner. Yes, so hot on the heels of that previous story about Microsoft joining the Linux Foundation, and you see that their partners are still playing the scummy moves all the way down. But, media punditry aside, is anyone really surprised that Microsoft...
I'm not. And that kind of goes back to, if they were truly trying to change things, I mean, that that part of their DNA, it's like, Linux bad, we must sell. It extends to their partners, and they're definitely going to have to change that. But I understand what their partners are kind of throwing at, because they didn't put Linux server side, Munich. They dumped it on the desktop, and they do not want Linux to be seen as a viable desktop replacement, man.
Mm-hmm. They will do pretty much anything to get people to use Windows on the desktop. And that can be seen even in French schools, where they had partnerships between Microsoft and the government. I mean, they go quite far into making deals. They offer free copies of Office. They offer free copies of Windows.
When when Munich decided to change to Linux a couple of years ago, Steve Ballmer himself, he was the CEO of the company at the time, he personally went to Munich and said, please don't use Linux. Please keep using Windows. And the Munich people just said, no, we spent 12,000 euros trying to, moving 15,000 or however many PCs of the entire Munich municipality to Linux. And just the Windows licenses alone would have been 15,000 euros. So, no.
Yeah, then you still got to think about long-term support and all that. It's like, all right, technically you might get away, make the numbers work. And I'm sure, because Microsoft will walk in there and their partners will cut them mad deals just to get their foot in. But yeah, man, they're on that. I don't see that changing anytime soon. But Firefox is going 50.9.
Yeah,
right?
It reaches version 50, which comes with a bunch of new features. There is some support for the WeDivine DRM, but that's on Windows and Mac only. So I wonder what they're doing with the Linux version of that. They also added executable files protections on Mac and Linux. They added a new locale for the Guarani language, which I didn't know about until today, and a bunch of new stuff. And they also have something interesting, is that they are providing with a font for color emoji, which don't have. If you don't have one installed, they will fall back to that one. So it's cool that they have support for color emojis in Firefox. If you remember reading on OMG Ubuntu, they had a few articles on how to enable this. And now it's available pretty much out of the box.
Yeah, and Firefox, well, Mozilla has always had that thing about, let's introduce a new feature, but we're not going to introduce it to everyone at once. We're going to phase it out. And one of the things that they did with this release was increased availability of WebGL to more than 98% of users on Windows 7 and newer. So you're saying you're serving a GIMP browser to 2% of your user base still?
I don't know, man. I just definitely want to throw back to the emojis because I was like, I did not know, /care, that Linux did not have an official emoji set. But, all right, that's a thing. Firefox, Foxfire, we love you guys doing good work. Can you make a version, like, can Firefox 51 just, like, not have an aneurysm when I load Google Docs in it? Will be sound as a pound after that. Well, what are you talking about? Grep is cool, man. Grep's not cool. Grep's old.
Yeah, they have this feature about full word search. So it's like grep-w. It will search for a whole word as opposed to searching for part of a word. So, yeah, I mean, it's like the grep feature.
All right.
So let's move from good ideas to something that could potentially be a bad idea. Another one from ZedNet, getting heavy.
Yeah, this one is, it comes from David Gewirtz. I'm sure he'll let us know how to pronounce that properly if he cares. He says that how Linux can save small businesses and hold hardware. And that's all very well and good. It is. And anyone who's used Linux for a while knows for a fact that Linux does, in fact, help keep that Windows XP PC that keeps getting hit by ransomware, which is what he ran into. Not he personally, but a friend of his who called him up was like, we got ransomware.
No. This is completely wrong. If someone calls you up and they're like, man, I need help with my Windows XP machine, that's great. You go over to their house, you unplug it, you take it outside, put some petrol on it, and Jimi Hendrix that thing, man. It was like problem solved.
But yeah, so he went there and he said to the guy, well, why don't you use Linux? I mean, you don't have to pay for the newer Microsoft license. You can use LibreOffice since it's a very small company. You can just use LibreOffice to not pay the Office license either. And basically, they adhered to his suggestion, and he felt the warm and fuzzies inside and decided to share with the world his experience. Now, in other shocking news, Linux reviving old hardware is like saying that the sky is still blue. Everyone knows that. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who don't, because everyone in the Linux community and the circle, the tech circles might know about that, but a lot of people don't, and redundant as they are, that's why these articles still exist. Strider?
Yeah, I mean, the article mentions Chrome OS. I mean, what's up with that? I mean, if you're going to replace Windows XP, you're not going to replace it with Chrome OS. And then it goes on about, it says that Stephen J. Vaughan Nichols, which is also a ZDNet's author, recommends Mint. Okay, so he went from Chrome OS to Mint. So which one is it? So
hey man, Chrome OS is just like a starter drug. Give them a taste. Give them the Android and be like, it's like that, but you can have a lot more fun with it. Really wasn't a fan of the, in small businesses and troops like that, unless you have extremely good kung fu, don't walk into a place, especially a place of work, and be like, we need to get all these things switched to Linux. Now, there are people who can do this, and they can do an excellent job. They're just not the majority. A lot of people will make some screwball mistakes, and it's like, ring, ring, Vin, what's up? Everything's on fire. Maybe you could come sort this mess. And I was like, that's going to be very expensive, Brad, but okay. So do keep that in mind. Now we need to talk about the most important thing there is. That's the people who help make this show possible, Pedro.
Yes, they give us money as these insane people who help bring this very show to
Beautiful,
you.
lovely
because
people.
Yeah, they are insane, and we love them because of it. It's our Patreons. We have 88 Patreons.
I kind of want to apologize to Matt. We had a contest for Deus Ex last week, and I had a sorting error and accidentally read his name out before I read the correct one. I was like, oh, that's gotta suck. Sorry about that, buddy, man.
Yeah. But yeah, we have giveaways that we do every now and again, and if you like those Players episodes of, the LGC crew playing some Left 4 Dead, well, we already finished trying. That was also a Patreon goal, which we have now finished. And if we get up to 200 Wet Stinky Caches a week, we will force Jordan to play through Serious Sam 3 because he loves that game.
But I think one of the more important things is like the 175 goal. That'll open us up for 2 more prototyping shows a week, so we can play around, do some stuff. Just crazy ideas. It will give us that time to have things and just melt it down and shake stuff out and play. But thank you. I mean, if you're not a Patreon, turn around and thank a Patreon because they are the reasons this show is on. Also, you can head over to linuxgamecast.com. We have a support the shows and button, Amazon links and all that. I think Mir kicked in and bought some things. Very awesome of him. Okay, shilling over. What is this? All right, you can't move Windows controls to the right on Ubuntu, and I'm guessing by Ubuntu, they mean Unity. What?
Then at this point, that's the case. Come on, stop fooling yourself.
Oh yeah, that's right. I had to download a different spin of Ubuntu and to install XFCE. Yeah, what am I thinking, man? I mean, that's how it works, right? Strider, is this article being stupid on purpose or is it clickbait, man? I can't decide.
I mean, something's going on here because last time I checked, it was still possible to move the buttons on the left, even in Unity. So they have removed that feature recently because, I mean, it was possible pretty recently. Usually I do the opposite, which means whatever desktop I use, whether it's XFCE or GNOME or KDE, I want to move the buttons to the right. But I mean, I don't really understand why they would make it impossible to move the buttons to the left on Unity. They say it's a design decision, but usually I don't believe that. Usually it's we don't want to maintain the code in order to do that. I mean, it's never a design decision when you had that feature and you remove it. It's just that you don't want to maintain the code. And I respect that. I mean,
and apparently this has been gone for a couple of months because the guy who wrote the article, he wrote it exactly because he was approached by someone else. It's like, oh, how can I change the buttons in Unity from the left to the right? Like, most people use them. And he said, oh, just use the Unity tweak tool. And the other guy came back to him and said, no, there's nothing in there that lets me do that. So he checked, and he also checked with dconf and gconf editors, and he couldn't find a way to do it. So chances are, yeah.
But hey, I don't know, man. You definitely got to get over. I got to get over my heartfelt belief that more than 9 people actually use Unity intentionally, and B, if you would have told me, oh, you can't change this, that sounds like something the GNOME project would do. But apparently, Unity, Unity team looked at that and they said, yeah, you have those really smitey decisions for UI design because then we want some of that too. I definitely thought about this. I think I've had my controls set up on the left since 95, 96, just because Windows was on the right. And I was like, nah, I'm not going to look like when, I was a teenager, man. Come on, cut me some slack. And that just kind of stuck with Ubuntu. Now that I'm running that for our production box, I was like, okay, they're already there. I'm cool with that. I being on the right's weird for me at this point after too many decades, but we get a fun little story that Pedro threw in here about the Stallman and his katanas.
Yes. So Stallman doesn't really like Uber. I mean, like everything that Stallman doesn't like, he's okay with the concept. I was
just about to get to. I was like, all right, can we get a list of stuff he does like? All right.
Yeah, everything he says he doesn't like, he's okay with the concept. He's just not okay with the implementation because anything that is not 100% reliant on free software. It's spyware, according to Stallman. So there are a number of concerns that he brings up, which is like privacy. There he goes on like point by point list of privacy concerns, user freedom, abuse of drivers or abuse from the drivers. He actually goes into both. There's taxes and comparison to real taxis. And there's also a bit about discrimination, which, well, if I had to disagree with something, I disagree with that entire bit.
Straight up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of his points that are true. There's a bunch of things about Uber that are very wrong, and yet I wouldn't want to live somewhere where Uber isn't available, because I mean I have used Uber just yesterday, and I find it pretty great. But yeah, I mean, Uber is not very, very cool, mainly to its employees, to the drivers. They don't get paid really well and all that kind of things. And what I wonder is, I mean, it would be totally possible to build an open source platform that would be just like Uber, and that would give 100% of the revenue to the drivers, and they would need to pay a small fee to be able to use that service. But yeah, I mean, if you want to have like something like a shared economy, then don't go under like a huge corporation like Uber and build your own stuff. I mean, I would do it if I didn't have like so many ongoing projects, and that would be a really neat.
Yeah, my first thought to this is, like, hey man, this is 2016. Welcome to the gig economy, Brad. I mean, that's definitely a thing. Love Stallman thinks Stallman walks the walk, you know. So yeah. He gets a pass. I was like, all right, I think you're BS crazy on some things, but you know, I respect that by itself. And you just know that this all started because some Uber driver somewhere set him off when he was on a ride, and he's rawr. It went on to that. Hey man, Uber helps a lot of people out. I know it's a lot of supplementary income. I know some people that do the Ubers. I don't like people that much, so it wouldn't work for me. Plus, you probably don't want me hunched over in a car going, what, move, okay, and all that business. A bit there at the end, he was like, well, it kind of harms real taxis. And I was like, man, all right, check this out. You know, a real taxi is just your average motoring vehicle blessed by your local government overlord. So didn't really expect him to be backing it on that angle. But you can't be gone in 60 seconds. Sometimes it takes 70.
Yeah, sometimes it takes 70, and that's what the fine folks at Bleeping Computer are telling us about. So at first, this article had a very clickbaity title. It says, Linux flaw allows root shell. The original title, what was it? You can bypass Linux disk encryption authentication by pressing the enter key for 70 seconds. That was the title. Then they changed it to Linux flaw allows root shell during boot up for Lux disk encrypted systems. So yeah, that's a bit more representative, because what this does is, since the crypt setup, if you're using distro that uses crypt setup, which nowadays is most of them, and you set full disk encryption, and when you're booting, instead of putting in the encryption password, you just hold down the enter key for 70 seconds, that will crash, and you will be left with an init-rd shell. And the problem with that is that init-rd shell has root permissions. So that's a problem. Even though it doesn't really decrypt the entire drive magically. It doesn't do that. It can't do that. If it did, it would raise more questions than it answered. But no. You get full root access. Now, in order to exploit this, you still need to have physical access to the machine, or at least remote access to whatever server is running the virtual machines, so that you could, reboot them and get into the encryption shell. So it's not exactly easy to exploit. But once you have that physical access, yeah, you can basically run amok or delete everything. And
I mean, I don't know, man. I keep thinking like, if I got physical access, all I need is a pair of pliers. I don't need to.
Yeah.
I don't need software exploits to get the password straight.
Yeah, I mean, by the time you listen to this, it has probably been patched pretty much everywhere. And I'm pretty sure that anyone who has full disk encryptions set up on their drives also maintains their system pretty regularly. So you might not have a lot of chance of owning a box with this method. That's
So show of hands. I mean, I don't do full disk encryption. Like, nope, I don't. Pedro?
I
this
don't
one
either.
is fully encrypted.
Okay. Tiebreaker.
Yeah, I might set up the full disk encryption on my laptop one day. I mean, that would be a good idea.
One day. So
Yeah,
remember,
but,
kids,
that's-
Linux Weekly Daily Wednesdays, horribly insecure.
But that's one of the things they mentioned in the article, actually, because the same way that I have disk encryption set up on the netbook here, the boot partition is not encrypted. So one of the things that they say is you could possibly load something into the kernel line in Grub to load some malicious stuff that would work in the background to, say, give you access to that machine after it was running. That way, after the user was running it, you would have access to the files. That's an issue.
Well,
Yeah.
we got some, we got elite hack, man. Totally
Yeah.
hack, 100% a hack, Strider. It's all the hacks.
Yeah, so Nintendo has released a new console, which is the NES Classic. And what it does, it allows you to play...
Strider, that's a Famicom. I'm trying to save some hate mail for next week. So that's
Yeah, on the photo, that's a Famicom. But they have
That's a
both versions.
Famicom classic. It's like the NES Mini, but it's Japan exclusive.
So they have both versions. They have the American version. So this
It's
is
just a different shell. The board is exactly the same.
it's the same thing, yeah.
Yeah.
So they give you access to 30 games, and the console itself is running Linux. But how the hack works is that it allows you to run pretty much any Linux distro on the NES Classic, as opposed to being restricted to the NES games and whatnot. Now you can run pretty much anything. So at its current state, it's pretty much limited in what you can do. You can't run anything yet, but I mean, I'm pretty sure it will get better. Not sure about its usefulness, because if you want to have Linux on a similar device, you could install Linux on a Raspberry Pi, which would be much more simpler. But hey, I mean, that's a fun little hack.
let's just be honest. We don't put Linux on everything because it's practical. My dead badger is running Linux not because it was practical, Strider. But hey, I do have to ask, if you were fortunate enough to get a hold of one of these little critters, why in the world are you doing this instead of hawking it on eBay like a normal person? I mean, those things are going for like 800 quid.
Yep. The price jacked up considerably since the very first batch went nope the moment it was available. Now, yeah, like Strider said, in the age of Raspberry Pis and all its clones, it was just a matter of time until this happened. But if you really want a teeny tiny box that you can install Linux on and use for the most insane stuff, which we'll get to in the slice of pie in a bit, yeah, you can do that. And it's Raspberry Pi 3 is actually cheaper than the NAS Classic.
And I also want to point out, I think there's a better guide for doing this with the US version on our reverse engineering. But don't quote me on that. I think I saw a better laid out guide. But we do have a last little bit. How are we going to enunciate this? We're famous for our incorrectness. Salix Live? All right, fine. I was going to call it Salix. But they have an XFCE 14.2 spin. It's out. All right, cool. What is Salix? You never heard of it?
It's not a Ubuntu-based XFCE distro for once.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a new distribution. I haven't tried it. I should put it in a VM and play. I didn't get a chance to do that, but I wanted to give him a quick mention before we noped out of here. I was kind of chuckling at one of the features using XFCE and nice artwork. I mean, listen, man, I'm an XFCE lifer. Before that, I was on CD. Those are two words that shouldn't be in the same sentence. Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those distros that I don't really like because it's basically Slackware, which with a different setup. So if you want to have a setup for some things you like, just provide a shell script and a zip file. I mean, with the themes and everything. I don't want to.
Does Slackware have PPAs?
Yeah, they probably do have like external repos.
Oh man, let us know. I have not touched Slackware in 13, 14 years intentionally. I've heard it's slightly more user friendly than a coiled rattlesnake these days, but yeah, I'll take people's words. This is also available in 32-bit builds because apparently those are still a thing. But before we close this show out, we like to check on like embedded neat things.
Indeed, this is our slice of pie. And, pies usually have a lot of sugar in them. And if you eat a lot of stuff with sugar, you might get diabetes. Strider, what can I do if I get diabetes and I have a Raspberry Pi kicking around?
Yeah, well, you can build yourself an artificial pancreas. So, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. People did actually build useful things with Raspberry Pi for a change. So you'll need for that a battery.
That's a big battery, though.
And you'll need a glucose monitor, CarLink USB, whatever that is, and insulin pump. So with that, you'll have like a closed loop artificial pancreas.
Yeah, man, definitely with a closed loop system. And we're talking about some brave warriors, but they want something better than is currently available. And they like hacking and braver than me because you're talking about something you don't really want to mess up. But they've made tons of different monitors and stuff like it. Just fell under like that is really cool and that's really neat because I know a lot of people that have the diabetes and they're like, man, it's not covered by anything. And they have decent health and coverage. And it's very expensive. So stuff like that, if it can help save some coin or just something to play around with, that's all good news. But a smarter way to, oh God, this thing's back. This is the chip Pro.
Yep. You remember last week when we said that the bucket chip now has 3D acceleration, right? I didn't dream that. That happened, right?
Okay.
So apparently now we're talking about the chip itself, not the pocket chip, not the full console, just, the SoC, the brains of the pocket chip. It has 3D acceleration, as you'd expect, since we already talked about it last week. But the biggest thing here is this is a $9 computer, basically. Like your Raspberry Pis and whatnot, except it's teeny tiny and it's considerably cheaper. And I remember there was a big snafu when it first came out about the components and the chip being more expensive in production than $9.
Hey, man, I was one of the backers of that. I looked at it. I was like, you can't make that for $9. And they turned around and they called me up and they're like, Ven, what? And I was like, go check our website. Why? And I was like, haha, we made it for under $9.
So. Yeah, so, and I'm guessing they or the success of their campaign had something to do with the fact that some of these parts actually dropped in price considerably. So they can now sell them almost at a profit. They still have to account for production costs and whatnot. But $9 for a fully working PC with 3D acceleration supported out of the box, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. But they also have console kits, which comes with HDMI adapter that has a power supply, something like SNES controller.
Yeah.
And it comes with Pico 8, so that's their gaming framework, which is very basic, but I mean it's still kind
of. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with this VR support.
I remember that.
Yeah, Pico 8 with the 3D acceleration bit built in there, and wow, that's going to be some hipster jankiness right there. And I'm looking forward to playing with it.
Yeah, it's the specs on the chip itself are nothing to write home about. It's a 1 gigahertz ARM v7 CPU, 256 or 512 megabyte RAM module, I2S audio. You can have dual mics, apparently. You get Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 4.2, and it's completely open source.
Mm-hmm. So, if people want to get a hold of us, how can they do that, man?
Well, they can always go to linuxgamecast.com. You hit the contact button on the lovely nav bar there, and you fill out.
Yeah, I think we're going to emphasize that the best way to get a hold of us.
This is the best way.
This is the way where we will be sure to read it.
We will get an email, we will get a notification on whatever device we have that account set to, and we will read it. And chances are, if it's something pertinent, we will feature it right here on the show. If, for some reason, you decide not to use this contact form, which you should, you can also just leave us a comment on YouTube, leave us a comment on Patreon, go to our Facebook page, leave us a like, leave us a comment there. Chances are, either me or Ven will see it. You can also comment on the posts that we make on Twitter or on Google+. And this is usually where our feedback segment would start, but none of you heathens had anything to say this week, so I'm just going to make something up. I got nothing.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Linux Weekly Daily Wednesdays. If you want to check us out, we're always live around 3 p.m. Eastern. You can subscribe to us on the YouTubes. It'll give you a live notification, and you can say, hey, boss, I'm working. This is continuing education. Lie to him. I'm at Vinstone on the Twitter nets, plus Vinstone on the G+. If you want to scream at me, I will most likely get back at you, but it might take a day or two, or I might have missed it. If I get back to you within a week, be like, Vin, hit me up again.
And if you would like to see more of this perfect example of a Portuguese Latino male, yes, you know you want to, you can find me at Unaccounted For on Twitter or plus Pedro Mateos on Google+. I almost got through that, damn it.
And you can find me on Twitter at Strikor and on Google+, plus Mathieu Commandon. You can also find me on lutris.net, and when you are done sending money to Linux Gamecast, you can also head to patreon.com/lutris.
Kick them a few francs, man. It'll be brilliant, but we will return next week. Until then, you can come check us out Saturday. We do a gaming show. This is like this is us being adults. I know it's a low bar, right? Extremely low bar, but yeah, the Saturday show is completely unhinged. A whole different experience if you're new to it. So, until then, see it.
Yeah, so we actually show some restraint here, believe it or not.
Strider gets naked.